Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Drinks in a Movie podcast. I'm still not drinking right now because I'm recording a bunch of episodes on the last day of my fast, so no booze on this one. But let's just get into the movie. I'm going to be talking 1953's thriller film, The Wages of Fear.
Tu crois pas qu'on fait une connerie maison?
Mais qu'est-ce qui te prend?
J'ai les foies.
I have to offer you is not cozy. That stuff's nitroglycerin. It's a real tough job. Putting $5,000 in each truck. At least one's got to get there. Slightest bump, you're a goner. Won't be enough for you left to even pick up.
Mais t'es pas fou, non? C'est pas mes oignons, mais t'as choisi une drôle de bled pour ton père.
Il faut en choisir pas. 2-3 coups de pétard là-dedans, ça fait du bruit. Que se arma, que jaleo, que bronca. Oui.
À l'aspirate, il y a le pétrole. Et quand le pétrole s'arrête, il n'y a plus rien.
La prise, mon Dieu, la prise! Et puis merde, ça devait arriver à force de jouer au couillon, on finit toujours par gagner.
So I always start with the spoiler warning, in the intro before the show starts, but I really have to emphasize it again here. I think this movie is worth watching. No spoilers. I'm going to talk about it in detail. Just go watch it. And the reason I'm also kind of putting on this extra spoiler alert is the William Friedkin film from the 70s. I don't remember what year. But the movie Sorcerer is a remake of this movie. And I watched Sorcerer several months ago. Loved it. I was completely blown away. I thought it was incredible. I'm hoping to do that on the podcast soon. And so I was like, oh, it's a remake of this movie, which is actually adapted from a 1950 French novel. So I guess Sorcerer is just another adaptation of the book rather than a remake. But if I spoil this, that means I'm spoiling Sorcerer. So if you have any interest, at least in seeing Sorcerer, please do not listen to this episode. Trust me, I want to save you. You deserve to see the movie. If you haven't seen it before, you deserve to watch it and go along for that ride without knowing what's going to happen. The less you know, the better. Trust me. I was one of those people. I was like, I'm just going to finally watch this movie. I've heard big film fans talk about it. I've seen it that it was screening at places. I always thought it was like a fantasy movie. It definitely isn't. And then finally I bought the Criterion Blu-ray when it got released and I was just blown away. So I immediately was like, damn, I got to see the original movie from the 50s, the French film, The Wages of Fear, which is also on Criterion Collection. So I picked up that Blu-ray immediately. And yeah, let's talk about it. So you've been warned. If you like a good thriller movie, like a real white-knuckle thrill ride, then do not listen to this. Otherwise, here we go. So The Wages of Fear follows, everyone's in this South American town. It's kind of undefined in the movie, but we've got people from different countries and cultures, which is interesting. And they change language a lot. They switch from Spanish to French and I think even Italian at points. It's hard for me to tell. I don't speak all these languages, but I know certain words are just different. You can tell. So I think that's interesting. And all these people are just in this kind of podunk desert town where they can't really escape. And they're all poor and just hurting to get some kind of work. And they're kind of not a part of mass civilization, right? It's just its own little area. And there's only one airstrip to get them in and out of there. But all these guys are kind of poor. You don't really know what brought them there and why they're there, which is kind of interesting. You can get some ideas, but that's kind of for you to, kind of come up with on your own. But there's the Southern Oil Company, so an American corporation, this oil company that's there. They're living the dream, they're walled up. They have a whole compound. They exploit these people for work from time to time, but otherwise, aren't too helpful. And so what happens is, we meet a handful of characters. There's kind of a group of characters. You get the idea of who's going to be your main people. We have Mario. We have Joe, who's an older guy, who's a gangster, I guess, that just got stuck over there. We've got Bimba, we got Luigi, and a handful of other people. Now, what happens, we're kind of chilling and getting to know these guys for, I'd say, maybe the first 30, 45 minutes or longer of the movie. It does start off a little bit slow, I have to say. And at one of the SOC, Southern Oil Company oil fields, there's a big fire, right? So the oil guys are talking. They're like, well, we got to stop this. We've got nitroglycerin over here. We got to get it. And apparently this is, fight fire with fire. They got to create some other explosion to help extinguish the flames. But it's basically a suicide mission because they've got to drive all this nitroglycerin 300 miles away through like rough road. This isn't smooth road. They're like going through hills and mountains and all kinds of shit. Nitroglycerin is extremely unstable. Like if you just move it too quickly or a drop hits the ground, it's going to explode. And they've got like tons of this stuff on the truck. So they decide, they're like, yo, we're going to hire 4 drivers. So we need 4 people, 2 trucks, so they're in pairs. You'll get $2,000 each to get the nitroglycerin 300 miles away to the oil field. Basically a suicide mission. But everybody's so broke and they're going to get paid $2,000 US. So this is like a game changer for them. Like their lives will change. They're going to get out of this, so to pretty much all these guys, it's like worth it. So they have like some tryouts or auditions to who the truck drivers are, who's going to be the best drivers. And it gets narrowed down to our characters, Mario, Bimba, and Luigi. Now Joe's pretty sketchy. They give the job to like another guy, but he doesn't show up the morning they're supposed to leave, and then Joe shows up instead. And we already know that he really wants this gig. By the way, he's friends with Mario because I guess they're both from France originally. So, and it's not, you don't really know. It's like, did Joe like kill the guy or just talk him down? Like it's definitely implied that Joe did something to make that other guy not show up, which is pretty interesting. But then, they get on their way, they load up the trucks. And from this point, they demonstrate early on like how fragile this substance is. So even when they're like putting the jerry cans of the nitroglycerin on the truck and loading it, it's like, it's already becoming very tense. And this is where the whole movie is just like a tense kind of thrill ride. Again, getting from point A to B and things going wrong, in the middle. And they have these 2 trucks. Like they don't need all that nitroglycerin, but they know that chances are one or both of them are going to get blown up. Like it's most likely. So they're just kind of like, all right, we'll just send as many as we need until somebody makes it. And they're starting with these 2. So the rest of the movie just follows this journey of these guys going on this treacherous road to get the nitroglycerin to the oil field, and just all the stuff that goes haywire along the way, and just how their dynamics kind of change and whatnot. So Mario's paired up with Joe, and they leave first. They're leaving 30 minutes apart so that if there is an explosion, the other group's not going to get taken with them. They need a little bit of space. So they leave first, then Bimba and Luigi, which, by the way, Luigi was friends with Mario, but then they had a weird little scuffle because Luigi was arrogant one day and he almost gets in a fight with Joe at the bar. It's a really kind of interesting scene where you see Joe as like a big tough guy, even though he's older and doesn't put up with shit, and it can be really intimidating to people. And that's going to be his story arc, where we find out that he's the most coward of all of them and can't hang and like causes some trouble along the way. And so I think that was really interesting character development, where in this journey we see it's testing the mettle of man, right? We're seeing what these people are really made of, and what they can handle. So it's testing their mental capacity just as well as the physical, right? More so the mentality. So they go on the road and they have to overcome these obstacles. There's one zone where I guess it's bumpy in a particular way, where Bimba says, and this is when they get ahead. So Joe is causing a lot of issues and being too slow and keeps wanting to stop, and he's super nervous. And then Bimba and Luigi eventually catch up, and so they're like, yo, what the fuck? We have to stay apart now. Like, you guys left first. If you're not going to go, then we got to go. So they go ahead. And they get to this part. I forget what they call it. I think it was maybe the washboard or something. And Bimba tells Luigi, who's driving, like, yo, you got to stay 40 miles per hour or over to get us through this. And it's like a long stretch that they have to go, because if you're under that, it's going to be too bumpy. We're going to vibrate and then the shit's going to explode. So you have to stay at this miles per hour. I think it was 40. The other option is that they have to go super slow. I think they said like 6 or under, but at that point it would take them like 3 or 4 hours to get through this section if they're going that slow. So they decide to go quick. The other group comes up and they decide to go the slow route, which is pretty interesting. Like, I like that you see them do different ways. But then at some point they decide, Mario's like, he takes over and he's like, no, we got to get through this faster. But the other truck's broken down like after they got past, so they're making repairs. Meanwhile, the next truck's coming up and they're going at a certain speed where they can't suddenly like stop, right? They can only slow down so fast as to not agitate the nitroglycerin. So that's like a really tense moment where they almost hit each other, stuff like that. There's this great sequence where there's kind of this rotted wood, not a bridge, but just like an overhang where I forgot what they used it for, but they have to do this kind of maneuver where they got to pull up and then back up, but the wood's rotted, it breaks, so they're trying to get out of there, and then they have to go up the hill. And when the first drivers go, like, the wood's broken and this and that, now the next truck has to go. So how are they gonna deal with this? And this is where we see Joe really start to break when he bails on Mario and just runs up the hill and kind of hides while he's left to figure this out. Granted, Mario did almost run him over and kill him, which is like kind of crazy, but whatever. So they're at odds. And then we get to this great moment where this is maybe the most tense moment in the movie, is when there's a big boulder stuck in the road. So Bimba decides, like, we got to blow it up. We have all this glycerin in the back. We got to blow it up to clear the road. And we get this pretty long sequence of him, like, putting together this little contraption to, like, time it out with, like, what do you call it? The shit that you light. Oh, my God. But they basically have to set it to be, like, a timed explosion so that they can run away and then blow the rock out. Meanwhile, the other guys get there, so they have to back up the trucks and do all this stuff. And it's a really good tense scene where he's got to stay there. And they're all, like, he's probably going to die. Like, they know that anything can happen, right? But he devises this plan and he gets it all worked out and sets up his little contraption and lights the fuse. That's it. And then they get away, they blow it up, and they make it through. And then that's a really good moment. And we get to a scene. I love how they show how unceremonious this can be, where, again, blowing up at any moment, right? It's like a second and then you're done. So we have Luigi and Joe kind of talking in the car. We have Luigi and Bimba. We have Joe and Mario talking in their truck. They're, again, like 30 minutes out from each other, cutting back and forth. They're just like talking, getting to know each other and whatnot. And then as Mario and Joe are talking, I love the way this was edited, where all of a sudden there's this bright flash and you don't hear any sound yet, right? Because it comes later and they're just like, what? And then you hear the explosion and they see that, like, way up ahead, the other truck, Bimba and Luigi, just got blown up. And they're just like, fuck. And I like the editing here where we don't see it. Like, we don't see what happens. They don't show anything. It's all from Mario and Joe's perspective. And just like, oh shit. So now those characters that we've been with, and Bimba, who got him out of like a couple situations, is now, him and Luigi are just toast. So that's a pretty crazy moment. And then now we have the next kind of obstacle, which is where they get to where the explosion happened, and the oil line, they're following in like an oil pipeline. It's ruptured. So now there's a crater and it's like filled with oil. So they got to try and get across, and it's pretty crazy stuff. I guess now I'm just kind of talking through the whole movie. I should probably stop that. But yeah, that's it. You guys just got to watch it. I'll save the ending for you if you made it this far. But I think this is a really good movie. It is a good, engaging thriller. I think it starts a little bit slow in the beginning. I like the way Sorcerer kind of handled all that stuff better. But when they're on the road, it's like it's go time, and the movie goes really well. And seeing the character dynamics and how Joe kind of, shrinks throughout, I thought was like pretty interesting. And his friendship with Mario, how that deteriorates, but they need to depend on each other to get through. Yeah, it is well worth watching. It's worth all the accolades it's gotten. Maybe at some point I will, maybe I'll read this book, who knows. Let's see, I'm looking. Apparently In 2019, the film was ranked number 9 in Empire's The 100 Best Films of World Cinema. I got to see what else is on that list, but damn, top 10 of 100, world cinema, that's pretty damn good. So if you have not seen this, I do recommend this. Hopefully you didn't listen to the podcast if you haven't seen it, because, I just ruined it for you. And I also ruined a lot of Sorcerer. It is pretty similar. Sorcerer adds a whole other layer to it that I think is way more hardcore intense, but mostly pretty similar. So it's kind of cool to see a movie from the 50s and then done again in the 70s, and how different or not different they are, and stylistically and what they can accomplish. But yeah, this movie does a banger job. I think it's a must-see, everybody. So yeah, if you have not seen The Wages of Fear, give it a watch. Anyway, that's a wrap on this one, guys. Cheers. Thank you for listening to the Drinks and a Movie podcast. You can now find us on Instagram at Drinks and a Movie Pod, where we'll be posting photos from all the various films that we discuss. You can also email us at drinksandamoviepod@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and thank you for listening.